How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Absolutely crazy trade deadline, and we're going to be talking about all of it. And Mark Williams is our first topic. I've written a bunch about him recently. I'll link those below. But if you're excited to learn about Mark Williams, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. The support, so appreciated, especially lately with all the craziness in the NBA. But I feel like a lot of people don't really know about Mark Williams, whether it's him playing on the Hornets or his injuries. So we're going to talk about how good Mark Williams really is on both ends of the floor. Spoiler, really good on one end and not so good on the other. But if there's one thing Mark Williams can do, it is finish plays. 7 feet tall, gigantic, and lots of experience catching passes from an elite playmaker like LaMelo Ball, where obviously he has Luka Doncic and LeBron James right now, but Mark Williams knows what it's like to have a savant level playmaker throw him lobs in transition or pick and roll plays. And he's gotten really accustomed to finding his spots, and it's helped him become one of the better finishers in the league. He's not like a special finisher or anything, which we'll talk about, but he really does dunk everything around the rim when he gets the ball. And obviously part of this is just him being tall and large, but Williams has great hands. Look at Scoot Henderson trying to swipe and knock the ball away here, but Williams fights through that and goes up strong. And it's a really big value add for an offense like LA's that's presumably going to run tons of pick and rolls with LeBron and with Luka, and those two elite passers are going to feed him easy buckets. And Williams has a good sense of how to slip to the rim, how to get his buckets, how to score on these easy dunks. And he really is at his best when he's compromising defenses with his size and being patient. Look at him go straight up right over another very large human being in Brook Lopez here, waiting for his chance. He is generally a pretty patient scorer, but he's not perfect by any means, and his versatility outside of play finishing on offense isn't super high, where Williams will often kind of take ill-advised shots, trying to shoot over players, and, maybe part of this is because he hasn't had great teammates to pass to in the past. I do think his footwork and his scoring bag outside of dunking is a little bit raw. On a play like this, we can see he doesn't really have much of a plan here, it looks like, to attack the way that Jokic is positioning. Jokic is just sagging off of him. The most ideal thing to do would just be pop a little floater over him, but he's not great at that, which we'll get to. Williams tries to spin back, Jokic doesn't bite, puts himself in a really tough spot to finish, and doesn't end up scoring. So exacerbating issues that he already has. And Williams isn't a super effective short mid-range floater guy. He doesn't have the greatest touch in the world. Williams is shooting under 50% on layups this year, which is pretty poor among, high volume starting bigs. And you can see this, a lot of his shots miss short. He doesn't seem to have the best touch on these short little floaters. So the flashes of him doing it, though, are really important. But I want to come back to the patience as a finisher. Again, we see Williams' great hands snagging this ball above his head. Toumani jumps, he waits, and puts that in without drawing a foul there, unfortunately, but still is able to finish strong. And plays like this are really encouraging, where he just catches the ball high and pops the floater into the rim. This is going to really increase his versatility and just the different kind of things you can do with him on offense if he's scoring more consistently in this intermediate range. And he should be able to get his shot off over just about anybody, given his sheer size and the ability to just move his arms over basically any other big that he's going to face. And yeah, these little push shots in the lane are nice value adds when his creator can't get him a wide open dunk, or he can't just kind of be right at the basket. Williams can flip the ball in, and that's going to be an important thing. But just as, if not more important, is his ability to beat switches as a scorer in the post. And this is the good stuff. This is what I really want to see more of from Williams going forward. Backing down a still very tall but shorter defender in Michael Porter Jr., drop stepped over his left shoulder. This is a great... Look how far he moves his left foot. Right there. Gets it all the way around and is able to go up over Michael Porter Jr. and finish. Beautiful work there. And then we're going to see on this next play, gets switched on, I think it's Jalen Pickett. But he's taking care of business on these plays, doing what he should do. Beautiful left-handed touch right there. And Williams, like I said, not a great post scorer and probably isn't going to get a ton of post-ups playing in LA next to LeBron and Luka and Austin Reeves for most of his time on the floor. But when he does get these mismatches, whether it's an early offense or just sealing in the pick and roll, it's going to be important for Williams to take advantage. And he's improved as a passer this year statistically, but a lot of those are just dribble handoffs and stuff like this, where he is comfortable with basic screening and dribble handoffs and getting his guys shots But it's a lot of kind of quote unquote like fake assists and kickouts off of offensive rebounds and stuff like that. But he's not the best decision maker like in traffic when he's, going against his new team. Anthony Davis tries to spin, has a couple open shooters but doesn't pick them out, tries to wrap it around to I kind of get the idea here, honestly. Like if Nick was to like cut into this space, maybe he could have gotten the ball there. Like I get what Mark Williams was going for. It's not the craziest pass of all time, and he ends up getting the ball back on the other end for his team. But there's been some basic stuff like this where, shout out Nick Smith Jr., by the way, one of my favorite little role players, where he's just kind of catching the ball. He bobbles it for a sec, but holds the ball, quick pass out to the top of the key, and his guy ends up scoring because of it. So Williams is able to do this basic stuff. And of course, with Luka and LeBron on the roster, he's not going to need to do much playmaking. That's not his role. All of this stuff is kind of extra goodness. And then one thing Williams is always going to do is offensive rebounding. He is one of the best offensive rebounders in the league. Like on his own missed floater, going to tip the ball in over Jokic. I think he's in like the 93rd, 92nd percentile among offensive rebounders, and it's just so good tipping the ball in. He'll tip it out, tapping it back, and gets a lot of assists that way. So large and pretty high motor on the glass, going for rebounds. And that's kind of the value that Williams brings without the help of a Luka or a LeBron. What he does on offense is pretty simple, right? He rim runs, he dunks, he finishes, he rebounds. That's what he needs to do. That's what the Lakers need him to do. Defense is going to be more of a question, where on the surface it looks like he could be pretty good because of his size. He is a pretty good shot blocker. He ranks highly in the league in block rate and block percentage, just skying up and using his length to block shots on drives, gets the block on J-Dub right there. And when you can just park Mark Williams at the rim, he can be a really effective shot blocker. Like I said, the pure size and standing reach makes him pretty hard to get over and to get past. And again, you see a play like this where Williams pretty much stands at the basket. Is that Richaun Holmes? Tries to post him up and drops that, but Williams is having none of that and blocks the hell out of Holmes, and I think he ends up missing that. And then another burly post scorer in Valanciunas. His post defense can be pretty solid at times, as you can see that Williams isn't the strongest guy. He's still only 23, but the sheer size and length. Williams obviously isn't super strong yet. Jonas starts outside of the paint and is able to move him backwards into the restricted area, but just because of Williams' length, he's still able to get a pretty good contest on that shot. But pretty much every defensive metric suggests that Williams is a very, very harmful defender. Estimated plus minus has him ranked 463rd in the NBA, the 7th worst defensive EPM in the league. Cleaning the glass, according to them, he is the 4th least impactful defender. So opposing teams score 5.2 more points per possession on defense when he's on the floor, which is not good. And the only players worse on Charlotte are small guards, Trey Mann, Nick Smith, KJ Simpson. And we look at the more nitty-gritty stats. When he's contesting at the rim, opponents shoot 2.4% better. He fouls on he fouls on a bunch of his shots. He fouls a bunch of times per 100, but his foul rate uncontested isn't actually that high. And then teams shoot so much better at the rim when he is on the floor. So what gives? How much of this is real and how much of this is just defensive numbers being noisy? Because Mark Williams, as we've been saying, is legitimately at times an impactful defender at the rim, but everything outside of just parking at the rim for Williams and being large and being a big presence and a big body is unfortunately pretty rough. And of course the Hornets aren't a great defensive environment, but we're going to start noticing a lot of the issues with Williams after we watch a lot of the kind of highlights. And even on a play like this that gets labeled as a block, because Williams isn't the most vertically explosive guy, you can see he has to bend his arms and bend his knees, that a lot of his blocks look like this, where that might be a goaltend, where it's definitely close, right? He's not cleanly blocking the ball where there's no doubt in the world that that's a goaltend. That's how a lot of his blocks look, given his lack of, vertical pop. But the size can be nice in passing lanes here. Just sticks his right arm up and takes away that lob to LaVine just because of how gigantic of a person he is. But Williams is kind of a statue on defense, which is very much not great in the modern NBA. And the Suns in this fourth quarter just went at him over and over again. And because of his mobility, he's pretty much limited to just playing deep drop in the paint. He can't do much on the perimeter. And you can see Miller is already kind of back up. So Williams should be recovering back to Iguodala, but he opens his hips up very slow, just it swipes badly and fouls Iguodala. Like, you can see the foul-prone stuff right there as well. Earlier in this Suns game, we see an example of Williams just being asked to do more than he probably can. And again, the help defense ends up saving him here. But Williams doesn't leave the paint much. He doesn't cover ground on the perimeter. He forces his teammates to rotate a lot. And this is a pretty solid rotation by Williams. But notice how he jumps, and this isn't a shot, right? This is a pass. And if it wasn't for Miller making a great rotation here, this would have been a wide open layup or dunk. But Miller kind of jumps at everything. And this is the tough thing with a guy like him, who is in his third year, but he's played 83 career games at this point, and is going to foul a lot because of it. He's been really injured, especially in his lower body. And I think there are two main consequences of that. One being the in-game reps, and one just being his total lack of mobility and explosion and twitch. Like, we see on a play like this where Williams is kind of shading in the paint, and he should not be jumping this far out at a pump fake, and then he's just way too slow to open up and turn and recover to Coulibaly. When Williams gets out of position, he very often does not have the tools or the speed or the quickness to recover in space. And you can see just how slow he changes directions on a play like this, and how limiting the versatility of a guy like Williams is on defense. Because Williams is switched off of the big Bobby Portis right here and has to guard the corner in Connaughton. But he just simply can't do this. Quick pass. Connaughton barely has to pump. He doesn't even have to pump fake, right? Williams stops here and just takes so many steps to get back into the play. And once again, we can see not super explosive off of the floor to get a hand on that shot. So that's going to limit what the Lakers can do with him. They can't really switch him out much. It's hard to have him guarding the perimeter. And this is a wicked move by Kuzma. But it's tough when Williams is a guy who kind of bites at all of these fakes, where yes, he's going to get a lot of blocks because of it, but also he's going to give up a lot of shots and foul because of, like I said, his tendency to bite on fakes. Another example of Williams is just kind of parking at the rim and not being able to recover quickly enough. He just doesn't offer the kind of rotational help a guy like Anthony Davis, of course, does. So he's shading off of Plumlee. Josh Green is going to close out to Durant. And then LaMelo has to close out to Tyus Jones, so Mark Williams can sit in the paint. But LaMelo is late, and of course Mark Williams then has to cover two defenders at once, and he's just not quick or explosive enough to cover that space that he needs to. So definitely, as we can see, a lot of this is defensive breakdowns by his teammates, but defensive breakdowns are going to happen in the NBA regardless of what your team is. And the Lakers don't have a great defensive roster, and because of Williams' paint-bound defense, he's really reliant on his point of attack defenders. Like, when he has shitty ass defenders like number 0 guarding the ball, and he can't fight through, there's kind of nothing Williams can do here to stop the Durant mid-range except get a hand up and hope Durant misses. And that's not his fault. That's the scheme. That's just how. Those are the risks that the Hornets decide to take on for a play like this. And they're gonna struggle against teams with shooting big men, where Williams wants to come down and help and take this cutaway, and the Hornets had to double a lot just because the Hornets were a terrible defensive team. So Williams, again, going out here, doesn't want to go all the way out to the perimeter because he knows he can't recover if he gets beat. So a guy like Brook Lopez is just going to have, target practice against him because of his lack of speed and also willingness and desire to move out and close out on the perimeter. So that's another way that limits Williams to pretty much just being a paint protector, even though he's not that incredible. Back to this Charlotte game this Phoenix game, where you can see what happens when he has to play higher up at the level. They're using Oso Ighodaro as just like a DHO rescreener. Josh Green gets beat right here, so Williams feels like he has to step up, but this is just going to allow Green, who gets back to contest, look at all of this space in the paint that there's just nobody to cover, and Williams isn't nearly fast enough to recover. And the Hornets, weak side defenders outside of Miller, whose job it really isn't. It's not really his job to rotate because he's guarding strong side. But Bridges is never going to make a good rotation, and neither is LaMelo for that case, honestly, and in all likelihood. It just shows you the kind of the lack of a margin for error that the Lakers are going to be working with. Again, you have Williams up in hedge coverage right here. Okogie doesn't defend the screen super well, but Williams cannot push Simons out. He's not quick enough to keep Simons away from the basket, and he ends up fouling right there because he has to be out of position. So definitely, I am concerned about Williams' defense in LA. There's no doubt about that. And there's good flashes like this where he just stands at the level and can guard a pick and roll three because he is so large. And hopefully, just more experience and time helps Williams on the defensive end. And he is an upgrade to what they had. He's probably going to be better than Jackson Hayes or Koloko or Trey Jamison or whoever else the Lakers were going to have to play at center on defense. But hopefully, again, time, reps, experience, and even though the Lakers aren't a great defensive team, they're a much more competitive environment than Charlotte has ever been throughout his career. So hopefully that can help him make strides on the defensive end, and I think he's going to feast on offense. So is he a star? No. Is he like a high level starting big? He could be. He definitely could get there with defensive improvement, but he's going to finish plays. He's going to get a lot of points and rebounds, and I imagine he's probably going to be a guy who people who don't follow the sport super closely are going to think is better than he actually is. But Williams is a really good, intriguing young player who Lakers, are incurring a decent amount of risk acquiring him. They gave up a promising rotation guy in Connect and an unprotected first, even if it's far in the future, which is still a valuable thing. But they did need to do something else to try to really push for a title this year if they wanted to do that. And Williams is about as good of an option as I think was available. So I like the trade. I like Mark Williams, and I'm intrigued, especially defensively, to see how he adapts to his new environment. But let me know what kind of content you want to see going forward and what you think of this trade.